Good morning, everybody. It's the 22nd of February. As I mentioned before, I've got some of the guys that are running for the chair of the GOP. And so, again, trying to figure out the process, who does what, how these people get into positions, what makes someone decide they want to be in what I like to call the periphery or behind the curtain or whatever version of the term you want. So very active citizenry, active enough they want to be the chair of a party, but they don't want to be a candidate for the party. And so some of the questions like that we'll talk about. So I have Harry Brooks here. He is one of the front runners, as far as I understand, for the GOP chair. That meeting's coming up here in early March. If you are a registered Republican or not, I think you're welcome to come, but you can't vote unless you're a registered Republican. I'll ask some of those questions too. So Harry's here, and he has better things to do than listen to my intro music, so we'll get started. Harry, welcome. I appreciate you coming by today.
Good to be here. Thank you.
Okay, so like I said, for us, the show, I'm trying to understand the whole picture locally. We started off as a group of friends. We've been friends for a decade plus, and we'll get together and we'll argue, and we always end up in politics like any good set of arguing people do. And we can quote what Biden said or what Trump did this week and all that kind of stuff easily off the back of our hand because it's always in front of us. And so one of the frustrations we have is we always come back to the idea of, well, local politics is more important. They're who fixed the road, they're who handled the policing, and they're this, that, and the other. But we don't know about it as well because it's not as easy maybe not as easy to access, may not be the right word, but it's not as accessible. National politics is pounded in your face. If you turn the TV on, if you're on your phone at all, you get national politics. But local politics is missing, and so we started out, Gina Oster was my first interview back in the election cycle last year. And so we just took the idea of, well, if nobody else is covering it, why can't we? So let's go. And so we got into it and doing all this stuff. I've had Randy on a number of times, and I had him on a couple weeks ago, shortly after he announced that he is not seeking to keep the chair. And so I figured, why not? Let's see, this is a sub-election inside of the grand scheme of things, so let's see if we can talk to these guys coming in and see partially what the process is, what puts you in the position to seek the seat. So we'll start there. Randy gave me a little bit of background on you, but I don't. He speaks in metaphor, so I always have a hard time tracking Randy perfectly. So there, you have some legislative background. Am I understanding that correctly?
That's correct. I had the opportunity to serve east end of Knox County and parts of the South in the state legislature for 16 years. A couple of years ago, I chose not to run again.
What district was it?
It was 19th.
19th, okay.
19th district. That's if you're looking at East Knox County, and it swings over to the south as well. Some of the Gap Creek area, Anderson, and that particular section. But served 16 years. I wound up while I was there. I was chair of the education committee for a significant number of years, and one year I was chair of. I've been a chair, I think, every year I've been down there except for 6, and but enjoyed it. Was part of the team that put together the changes and the reform packages and ideas to improve K-12 education.
Okay.
And we were, when I began, that was my motivation to run, and when we began, we were.
I'm sorry, real quick. That was your motivation to run initially for
the state legislature.
All right. Just trying to keep the different runnings, phrasing accurate. Okay.
And while in the legislature, I said I'm a member of a team that, with the governors and with other legislators and leadership in the House. And the thought being is that we can do better than where we are and what we're doing. Because at that time, our evaluations, same evaluations as you would have in Kansas or Mississippi or you would have in Oregon. And we were generally at the bottom of the heap in comparison to other states. And a number of years later, we moved up to the middle of the pack.
Okay.
And those particular efforts were effective and successful. And Tennessee is still regarded as the fastest growing in regard to educational output.
Okay, so
outcome.
This is a little bit off of specifics of why you're actually here, but this is something that I've been kind of trying to dig into and understand. When you say same, I mean, I hear metrics. What are the metrics? So what are the metrics that we use as a state for education? Because always the first one that always comes up when you're talking about it is the BEP, the amount per student spent throughout the state and then inside the individual school district. So what other metrics, when you were part of the committee, did you guys use to evaluate our school systems and how they're working?
The data that we've had for years in Tennessee in regard to a student's knowledge, a student's level of learning, student's level of accomplishment academically.
So like off of testing scores? And
yeah, it was a particular kind of test. And what we were looking for was to develop a program and a system to where every student would grow a year academically in regard to a year time-wise.
Right.
And that was that was going to be our basement level. And because that's what we expected from that standpoint. And our data would tell us how much an individual student was growing. Mm-hmm. We could go back and examine, say, when Harry started the third grade, he would be at a level. Then we knew where he was at the fourth grade, fifth grade, sixth grade, on up the line. And the key that we were trying to encourage was with this data is to create an educational model, to create a teaching technique, to create a process where that student can grow at least a year academically in regard to a year, time-wise.
Right, because this is one of the things that's, I have two kids. They're at Knox County Schools right now, that I get in a lot of conversations with a lot of people with a lot of different outlooks on how schools work, how they should work, this, that, and the other. And the one thing I can't quite hammer down is the what the appropriate metric is and how to go about getting it, because that's always the you get the what are we, TCAPs now or whatever they're called, that a lot of parents don't like, because then you have teachers that end up teaching for the test instead of teaching the material that then should be tested upon. And so there's this whole kind of different thing. And so that's very, very interesting to me. And maybe we'll come back around to that, because this is this is stuff that if I had to pick a subsect of government interaction and stuff, the schools are top of my list, like many people.
Yes.
And again, one of the frustrations for me as I'm trying to understand this is who has legitimate impact on how the schools work. Because one of the things that I find is that a lot of candidates, when running, talk about how much they care about the school system and how much they want to do for it. But a county commissioner, for example, doesn't have a lot of play other than base budget, if I'm understanding the system correctly. And so when you have a county commissioner running out there, I'm going to do for the schools, it's well, you really can't, other than saying okay to the budget the schools provided the mayor's office and then to the commission. And so, again, one of the things for me, and I think this is why a relationship with you and the different county chairs is important to me in the show, is one of the things I'm trying to hammer down is, what is the job? So not what is the job that you're seeking as chair, but what is the job for a commissioner? What is a job for a city council person, which I know is a nonpartisan race, but we all know that we still play that game. What is the job of a state senator as far as things that they do have control over making changes to and don't? I'm not asking for particulars now, but that's one of the things that I'm trying to work on as a citizen. And journalist is a heavy word. I don't consider myself a journalist. I had the guys from Compass on this weekend. Those are actual journalists. I'm just a guy who talks a lot. Okay, so you stepped out of legislation. You decided you were done with that part of the game. And how long has that been since from then till now? A couple of years?
2 years.
2 years? Okay. And so Randy made the announcement. Were you already thinking about it before Randy made the announcement? Or was it kind of, well, if Randy's stepping down, this is my chance to step up?
Had not thought about it prior to Randy deciding not to run again.
Okay.
That was not an item in my mind or an item in my plan. This came about as a result of a couple of folks touching base with me, because in regard to some current concerns I had about, the process of attracting new voters, the process of developing new activists, process developing new workers and volunteers within the Republican Party.
Okay, so maybe that's a good line we could start following down there is, what do you see the position of county party chair? What do you see kind of the top couple of activities that the job is?
So first, support the Republican candidates.
Okay.
Provide them a variety of types of support. Secondly, is to involve and grow the volunteer base and the folks that are active in the party to increase that base, because it's the Republican base that the candidates run on. And the stronger the base, then the more effective the Republican candidate is and will be.
Okay, so how much of the party chair does anything in policy?
The party chair, I think there needs to be a knowledge of politics. My experience of having been a candidate now helps me understand what we can do and can't do with our candidates when they're nominated. So the issue of experience becomes very critical.
Right.
What do you know and how much do you know from a standpoint of assisting those that are running for office? The experience of being involved in campaigns, the day-to-day activity. Once you understand that kind of situation, you understand how to approach volunteers.
Right.
That there are a multitude of tasks, and process with volunteer A could very well be a different task that volunteer could do, whereas you've got another task B or C or D or whatever it may be, and there's different volunteers that fit the different task and perform at their peak as a volunteer and as someone assisting someone running for office.
Okay. And so to continue off that, so we because this talking to Randy, and Randy talks in metaphor, and I'm going to make fun of him to the end of the days for that, because it's fun, because he gets there eventually. You just got to connect a few more dots than a yes or no that you're asking. But one of the things that I'm always curious about is how much, once a candidate is in, how much does the party continue to work with that candidate in position? So I'm District 4 in the county commission. That's Kyle Ward currently. But let's say I run as a Republican. The party supports you wouldn't let me. I don't check the right boxes, but that's fine. So I get the seat. How much past election does the party stay involved with the candidate as far as interacting on different, when a policy comes up, does a candidate come to you and say, how does the party feel about this particular thing? Or is it more of, once they're in, we got them the job, they do the job, and we're working on other stuff?
I think one of our primary responsibilities is to assist the candidate become the office holder.
Right.
And then once an office holder, we can provide assistance. When you get to the primary time frame, then the party must become, in my mind, neutral.
Right.
And once the primary is completed, then whomever the nominee and whomever the folks in that district or the county or whatever it might be, wherever it might be, whomever they have chosen, now it becomes our responsibility to help that candidate as best we can and where the candidate needs some help.
Right. Okay. So that brings up kind of one we were talking about over the weekend. We got a question from one of our listeners that on a live show we were doing about Mayor Jacobs. Now, I don't know, this may be too early to ask the question because you're not the chair yet, but I see myself more as a libertarian than anything. Mayor Jacobs is nationally libertarian, but he ran as a Republican in county. And so the question from the listener was A, do we think he's going to be primaried, which we as on the show think not. But the B part of the question was, how does the GOP feel about him as a candidate moving forward? And again, this may be too early to ask that question. Maybe I'll check back mid-March and see if I can get an answer from you.
Well, the mayor is a Republican candidate.
Right.
And as a result of being a candidate, the Republican Party in Knox County will support our Republican candidates and provide the assistance as they need it, as to what they need. And, because it may vary from candidate to candidate as to what we can do or need to do to assist.
Okay. It's a good answer. I'm going to have to think about that one a little bit more. So tell me about how the process works it's technically you're campaigning currently.
Yes.
For an elected position in a subset of the population, which is the Republican Party.
Correct.
So, for using me as an example in the general, I have to go and I have to pull petitions and stuff like that. So how does the process work similarly? Do you have to have a certain number of people to even start the process on your side, or is it just, hey, I'll throw my name in the hat and then we'll go to the convention and we'll have a conversation?
The process in regard to the convention, this is an open convention, like I refer to it as a you all come convention. And the process there is that I will file with a letter of intent with the credentials committee and with the chairman of the party that I'm interested in running for chair. or for whatever position. If I want to run for
Treasurer,
whatever,
right.
but go ahead and let them know that it's there from a standpoint of activity. That is done, and then we meet as a convention, and we're all there's the determination to make sure that the folks that are involved in the voting have a Republican track record,
Right.
in regard to Republican primaries,
Right.
Republican activity, and then once that standard is there, then we determine that it's an active Republican. He or she is now part of the voting process. And so once we determine who's going to be in there to vote, so to speak, then there's nominations. Well, in this instance, the nominations for chair are in advance.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a known quantity as to who, and then we will vote on the folks that are nominated, or it could whatever the impact may be as far as who's being nominated. So that vote will occur. Previous to this year and to recent time frames, we used to have a convention where the precincts would announce their votes. In other words, the process was that the precinct, say at Ritta, or the precinct at Rocky Hill, the precinct at Farragut, the precinct at Fort Sumter, the precinct at Fairgarden, wherever that precinct's located, the chair of that precinct would, the chair of the party in the precinct would stand up and say, "We cast 4 votes for Jones and 3 votes for Smith.
Mm-hmm.
We have 7 votes, and that's where we are." But we've gone away from that. There were some issues that I'm not sure exactly what or why, but the state party suggested we go to an open convention. So that's where we are today in regard to this process.
Okay, because I've been invited. I don't know. I normally work Saturday morning, so it's gonna be hard for me to go. I've been invited, but I know I'm not gonna be able to vote if I go. I know I don't have the appropriate Republican track record and I wouldn't. It would be a lie for me to say out loud that I am a Republican anyway. But I am curious. Just again, it's a process game for me. It's like I want to understand because, what's crazy to me is the deeper I get in, the deeper it gets, is that there's so many little complicated things going on. This being a good example of this is it's probably not that complicated for you since you're in it, but for those of us on the outside, there's this complicated thing, and you're talking precincts and all this different other stuff, and it's like, okay, so but that's not even. It's an election, but it's not an election like we see elections, which brings us into, I guess, one of the other topics at play right now is. The state is considering again to close primaries. I have an objection to that, but I'm not a party member, so I guess my objection doesn't count per se. But is that something that you feel like is the appropriate move moving forward? Given, especially because I'm District 18, I got to sit through that Oster-Manis debacle and watch that show, and I sat in on that SEC meeting, which was an interesting introduction to the state party and how it plays. But so, do you feel like that's probably the right move moving forward? Is for the sake of, again, it's almost a purity test. That's not the best word. That's just what's kind of popped up in my head. I am certainly not a good person to have a purity test on whether or not you are a Republican, because I am not a Republican and I don't know the rules that sit in there. And so I get it on both sides. But I guess your thoughts on that.
My thoughts are the process we have now. I'm very comfortable with. The process of I'm being evaluated in regard to, do I meet the standard of 3 out of the last 4 primaries, or some number or some range, or, from that standpoint. So, the idea is the determination of being a Republican, I think, is important in regard to participating as a candidate, participating as a voter in the convention and things of that nature. But that doesn't mean that we don't stop recruiting other voters.
Right.
That doesn't mean that we say, well, wait a minute, we're with this little group here, so we're not going to be outreach to the independents. We're not going to be an outreach to the folks that vote in the primary every once in a while. We've got to continue the outreach. We got to continue to grow the party. We've got to continue to grow activity. We got to create more and more volunteers for the candidates that are out there working.
And so what I'm hearing is so that access as a non-registered person to primaries is one of the ways to open the door for people who may want to get further involved. So you do want to. So what I'm hearing is that you like it with the primaries open because if it was a closed primary, then I don't care about a primary, so I'm not paying attention, which would therefore lead me to not maybe step up because the candidate I want's in there and I want to help out or whatever like that. Is that what I'm hearing? Am I hearing that?
Well, what I'm trying to say is that the process we use now with the guidance from the state Republican Party, I'm very comfortable with.
Okay.
I do not know what the legislation says or entails. Haven't read that yet, so I don't know the particulars on that. It's the details you've got to understand, and I'm not aware of what's there. But the process we have now, I'm comfortable with.
Okay. Because again, like I said, for me, like I get both sides of the conversation when it comes to closing a primary. My big argument is if we, the tax citizenry, are paying for it, we should have access to it. But here nor there. Okay, so I don't know how to ask some. I don't know what questions to particularly ask because I don't know. We've talked about what you feel like the job is, and it's a recruiting job. Mostly, it's a recruiting and organizing the people that want to be involved. What does
and it's also raising money.
Okay.
That's a critical piece of the puzzle. I've been involved in so many campaigns over the years. I've been able to raise a fair amount of money, and been able to raise whatever was needed at the time. Now, in my political career in the legislature, I had one contested race for 16 years. Following that first election, I never had an opponent.
Right.
And I was obviously very blessed. Generally, you'll have an opponent after your first term, but I think the understanding of how to develop holding an office, and the process in holding that office and that experience lends itself to sharing that particular approach to other folks that are Republican candidates.
Okay.
And the idea of raising money is not something that's just easily done. You just can't open up a website and boom, you've got it. You've got to work at it. And you've got to know the history of who to go see and how to talk to the folks. There are some folks that if you know who they are, the best way to approach them. How to say, here's what we're wanting to do and what we need the money for.
Right. Certain issues ring the bell a little louder than other ones than just say blanket. Yeah. It's easier to get something out of them instead of just saying, hey, give me some money.
I know that
being a little bit more specific helps.
Yeah. In my life experience, and I think life experiences become critical when you're chairing a county Republican Party.
Okay.
The knowledge of all that you've learned over the years is so very, very important. It's just difficult to go in and say, boom, I'm the party chair, and with limited experience, it makes it difficult. It makes it so difficult to understand the candidates, understand what's needed, understand the relationship that needs to be developed with the candidates. And when I was, I guess, in high school, I started working in Republican campaigns.
I mean, don't say it like it's that long ago. It was 10 years ago?
Yeah, I wish.
Yeah, you started in the legislature at 12, I think is what we just implied there.
Yeah.
There's a math problem. Everybody figure it out. Because I don't like it's so foreign to me because I've not been involved, and so because I guess following some of the questions we had when we were talking over the weekend was and again, this is where I get confused because I want to talk local, but it's easier for me because of visibility to talk more national because it's easy. I guess here's the way to frame the question. When we look at the national party, for example, it's pretty well split. It's kind of got a sub-party situation going on right now. You got the more Trump friendly and then the more what I guess maybe moderate version of the Republican Party that is existing on the national level. Do you see that locally? Maybe not specifically Trump, but do you see the local party that kind of has some subset to it, I guess is a question.
Well, we are different. The folks that are in Thorn Grove or what they call Tuckahoe is different than the folks in Farragut. The issues are a little different in those communities. But in both instances, we're Republicans. The aspect of Fair Garden in regard to Farragut, the aspect of Fair Garden in regard to Fort Sumter, different, but yet we're still Republicans. The nature of who we are as Republicans is that I, as an individual, may or may not have a duplicate set of views on 400 issues.
Right.
With my neighbor that's a Republican.
Okay, well,
or with someone that's in Farragut from a standpoint of Republican.
Then I guess let me ask it this way: what are the core pillars of the local party?
I think the idea of individual freedom. I think the idea of individual responsibility. I think the thought being is that, we as Republicans, it's the old saying that, let's provide the help that is needed, but let's more importantly provide you the training.
Right.
That helps.
So lead a horse to water. The lead a horse to water thing.
And we as a party, are trying to find candidates that can best provide leadership in that office, can best provide the ability to manage that office with the employees, because it could vary as much as maybe over 1,000 people with the sheriff's department, and maybe 50 or 60 with one of the clerks. But every particular office holder, those are the particular tasks that they have to do their job and do it well. And if they do their job and do it well, then if they choose to run for re-election, then they've got a leg up in regard to acceptance by the party and acceptance by the public. But ultimately, our party is there to improve the lot of the Republican candidates, which in turn will improve the lot of the citizens of Knox County.
Right. Okay. So, okay. So then to I guess to follow on the original question, so we got those two pillars. What are some of the things that...
I mean, it's more than just those two
right,
pillars.
absolutely, for sure. But what are some of the things as we kind of spread out of the ideals where you see some of the friction within the local party?
Well, I don't know. There's always some level of friction in reference to just differences. That's not uncommon. I think the point is to find a particular candidate once the primary election is over, and we've got a candidate from the folks that voted in that Republican primary. Then the point at that position is to say, how can this individual best serve Knox County? What is it that particular candidate can do? And that particular candidate may have a different set of strengths and also weaknesses compared to another person that's over here that's interested in the same job.
Mm-hmm.
And the point of the party's involvement has to do with wherever that set of strengths are and that approach and that philosophy in regard to the office. It could very well be the person is running on a campaign of saying we need to reduce the tax on food. That particular concept could very well, be involved in reference to their particular slant, when they go to the legislature, go to county commission in that regard. Whereas another person, their particular concern may very well be the level of service. What level of service are we providing in regard to getting your driver's license?
Mm-hmm.
How long and how complicated, and what's the time frame of getting that? If you're buying a renewal tag, what's the time frame? How complicated is it? Those are the kinds of issues that the public look to the elected officials in regard to their effectiveness. And as a party, once we make that choice in the primary, then we as a party assist that person to become elected and to provide any help along the way that would enhance their election as a Republican and enhance their ability to manage their office.
Okay. Man, yeah. Again, like I said, this is I'm way off in the deep end right now of things I don't of the minutia that is just not in my brain set, for lack of a better word. So let's see.
Let me go over a task about what I think Republican leadership ought to be doing. We have currently, where you go vote, there's a precinct. Your precinct, what's it, Rocky Hill?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
My precinct is Redham. And within that area that's sort of defined literally on a map, and the addresses that are unique to that precinct, that becomes Rocky Hill Precinct. And the point is that within the Republican Party, what I think is so very, very important, very critical, is that precinct local Republican involvement. In other words, a precinct chair, precinct vice chair, whatever officers that precinct people want to do. Now, how you determine who's on the precinct? The point is that you've got these activists, these active Republicans out there that are very interested in becoming involved in elections and campaigns. You then create this group of men and women of all ages, young and old, and they become the precinct leadership. That's the core of assisting a candidate in that particular precinct. I think now we have in the upper 80s of voting precincts. So when you combine the precinct, the folks that are active with the Republican Party in that precinct, and you multiply it by 89,
right,
then you've got an effective base, and that's the base that the candidates will run on.
Right, and then you can subset them for particular districts in their
Yes.
precincts set within, so that you can maximize the effectiveness of that group for their district instead of having a District 4,
Yeah.
some active District 4 people trying to figure out how District 8 county commission's going on. You can let precincts over there deal with that. So it's a good bit of logistics and managing people and effort into the most effective use of their time for the ends desired, which is to get more better Republicans elected into the offices. Okay. I don't envy the job. It doesn't sound like a job I'd like. I mean, I own a business, and managing my 9 employees is more than enough for me, let alone trying to do it in 89 precincts or something like that. So, I don't know. Like my goal is to try to understand a little bit more of the process. So we talked about, your part of the process, what got you, well, I don't know. Did we get to why you're doing it specifically?
Yeah, to some extent, but the why is basically centered around the fact that we need to grow the party in regard to active Republicans.
Okay.
We need to grow active Republicans, and we need to involve more and more people. We need to go recruit folks that have Republican ideas and move them and get them involved in the party, get them involved in the election. It's a constant effort. If you're standing still, you're behind.
Right. Yeah, for sure. So there's our why. The how is you've done the version of the paperwork, and the convention's coming up, and then it's going to be voted on in the open convention, as you mentioned. The where, or what's it? South College, Crown College, where is it?
Crown College.
Crown College on the 6th of March. It's like 9 a.m. Get your coffee out and go down there and hang out and do it. I don't know if I'm missing anything on that part of it. So I don't know. Like, again, I feel like part of me is like, well, what makes you different than the other candidates, and like playing the really like this is an election kind of thing. But I don't know. Off of what you're saying, I get it, and basically whomever else is running, if I get a chance to talk to them, we'll see their same thoughts on the same kind of direction. So I don't want this to turn into, well, I don't know, he kicks puppies or something like that. That's not how these things are supposed to go. So I don't know. I kind of would like to go back and talk about your history more than your current.
That's fine.
If you want to talk more about school stuff, because, like I said, like again, one of the things that's always the easy conversation that everybody has about schools is how much money is getting spent. And obviously, I don't expect you to have a particular number off the top of your head. I know the BEP is like $7,400 right now. But and this is what's frustrating to me, which kind of puts me in the Republican camp probably a little bit anyway, is the answer is always more money. That's always the answer when you're talking to most people. It's more money. And so the question I started asking in return to that is like, well, how much? What's the right number? Because if you could put a right number out there and it makes sense, I might jump on board. But if it's always more, I don't know what to do with that. And so I don't know, maybe in your history in trying to address that kind of conversation in what we are doing, Because again, I think there's always going to be somebody out there that says we need more money. That's just going to be a standard answer to the school questions. It's again, I don't know. It's like you said, like the metrics of, I guess we'll start there. I guess so. The metric you were talking about before is like we have a grade level, and through the testing at the grade level, we established that this is what we want our third graders to be capable of doing. Same time next year when we're in fourth grade, this is what we want them to do. Now, is that something that is universal across the state? Or is it subset into different school districts and stuff like that have their own kind of model they go around? How does that? Do you remember how that all worked?
It's a concept that's statewide. The districts will develop the plan on how to accomplish that objective.
But they don't get to pick the standard. They get to pick the method to get to it.
That's pretty much the way it works. It's a statewide standard. So if you move from Knox County to Loudoun or from Granger County into Knox, you've got a similarity in regard to where you are and what you're trying to learn that year. It'll vary from system to system as to how they approach it. The small city systems like Maryville and Loudoun, Little City, they have a particular approach, whereas the larger county systems have a different approach. And the method that would work best of delivering that services in Memphis may very well be different here. Memphis has a lot of very effective I-zone schools. Now, back years ago, they were struggling, but today they've really done a better job in regard to what they call I-zone, and that's a name that they developed for a concentrated effort to improve the academic output, and that's what it's all about, to prepare a child for whatever they want to do in life, whether it doesn't matter what the task is that they want to do, but we've got to prepare them so they can be successful. And it's not, dollars are very important, but it's the effectiveness of how you use those dollars.
Right, because I could spend $10 and get it done, or I could spend $15 and still get it done the same way.
Or you can spend $15 and not get it done.
Right, just because I'm spending an extra $5 doesn't mean it's done.
Yeah, let me by way of research, one of the things that we accomplished a long time ago was that we did a state-by-state comparison research in regard to the quadrants that they would land in regard to grafting, their effectiveness in regard to outcome. How well were their students doing? And one of the reasonably effective states was Utah. But Utah was had the lowest amount of expenditures in the country.
Right.
And where, on the other hand, if you look at Massachusetts and Connecticut, they have probably one among the highest level of expenditures, but they are effective as well. And the point is, it's not necessarily money that creates the outcome. Money is critical. It's very critical to making sure that you're able to hire very, very good teachers. In Knox County, we have a great bunch of teachers and educators, assistants and leaders. They're quality, a very, very strong educational group of employees. And that is more of a key than necessarily dollars. But you've got to have the dollars, though, to attract those folks to come teach in your system.
Right, because one of the things that, if I understand correctly, and this is, again, very outside edge, is that of my understanding is that Knox County's done pretty well at keeping the countywide administration as small as possible to use that money in the individual schools instead of on another administrator somewhere in, I guess, whatever building they're in. They're going to TVA Tower now, I guess, once that whole process changes over. And like I said, it boggles my mind as the further I get into it, trying to understand it. I had Ron McPherson on, and we talked money for an hour and a half, and I lost the ability to add 6 and 5 by the end of that conversation. I was so confused on tracking the cash flow, which is one of the things that I have issue with personally, but that's an aside. So, moving forward, I was excited. I watched the State of the State. I think the push to put civics and government back in schools a little stronger is important because, well, I guess I don't like that because it might ruin my audience in the future because I'm trying to be that educator. But I think that's one of the things that that I don't remember at all, if I did any, when I was in school here. And I don't know if it was there and it was just failed to land because it didn't seem important to me, or whether it wasn't there at all. Because I mean, again, like I said, the further I get into this, the more complicated it is. And like, I don't know that I have, like, I think one of the things that I get really, emotional is probably a little bit an overword, but I'll use it. Like emotionally, like I get emotional about stuff when I start talking to people, because I'm using the image that I think the way government's supposed to work. And I don't know if that's an accurate image. The more I think about it, I go back to myself and go, like, is that how I think it's supposed to work, or is that how it's supposed to work? And that's what I think is the core civics class education that maybe I missed out on, is this is how it is supposed to work. This is how it was meant to work, maybe be the better way. And then, all the little sub details, because of little, how much party stuff they need to do in a high school civics class may not be as important as, because again, like I said, one of the issues I have is trying to understand whose job is what they're supposed to be doing, and so, I learned last week that the way our city government runs a little bit differently, as far as it's structured differently than our county government. Is they call it like it's a mayor heavy format or something like that, where almost everything comes through the mayor's office, and the commission or the city council is kind of a backstop, not a separate legislative branch. So again, trying to understand all these things and not remembering any of the high school part of it is not particularly helpful. Rowdy's saying hello, everybody. The audience is used to him chiming in, especially when we have guests in the building. So I don't know. Like I said, I'm wholly fascinated on the school part of it, but I don't want to spend the rest of the show on that. Is there anything else that you want to talk about, that you have a particular that you'd like to get out while we're here?
Well, the importance of developing a strong and effective Republican base, Republican Party is important. That becomes the base from which I ran on, and I know the party was there for me a number of times to help with whatever I needed. And I think that became an important part of my motivation to run. But my motivation to run is to enhance what we have now. And I know that Randy has done a hard job. He's worked hard to maintain the party's strength and viability. And my thoughts are to take that level and to move it up another level or two levels or whatever it might be. But we've got to continue to grow.
Right. One of the things that he mentioned on his I won't say it's his farewell show to me, but his last time he was here, was trying to inject some youth into the party. Because again, you look at the national picture, at least the joke is it's the old man party. Whether that's accurate or not, but it's at least there is some perception that way. And I don't know. Again, like I say, my dad was a Republican, or I guess maybe not officially. I don't know if I think when we lived in Florida for a while, and I think he had to actually register in that state. And I'm pretty sure he was a registered Republican back then. But some kids grow up and do the opposite of what their parents did politically, and some kids just fall in line. And I would have been closer to falling in line than doing the opposite. But I don't know. Like, yeah, it's interesting. How do I word what I'm trying to say here? There's a thought, and I can't quite plant it.
A number of times, a person's age and circumstances kind of determine how conservative you are.
Right.
And younger folks, may or may not understand, when they look at their paycheck.
Well, what's the joke? The old joke is, show me a young man who's a Republican, and I'll show you I think it's an asshole. Show me an old man who's a Democrat, and I'll show you an idiot, or something like that. That's the joke.
I'm not familiar with that.
It's something like that. That's the structure. I didn't. Yeah. I butchered the punchline there, but
yeah.
But yeah, you don't like you were getting at, is that when you're a kid and you don't understand what the taxes are and where they go and what they're doing, you feel like they should be doing more with your tax money, so that leads you to a more liberal outlook. And then as you grow up, you're like, quit taking my money, just leave me alone. And that pushes you back towards the Republican side of the ticket.
Because I think, dollars in the private sector outperform dollars from the public coffers.
Right.
And if you want to grow your economy, you grow your private sector. If you want to create employment, you grow the private sector. You can create temporary tasks like building a road, but when the road is over, do you have an employment opportunity for that person? The point is that dollars wisely spent, government dollars, is an objective within the Republican concept. And the more we can put back in the sector, the assistance, in regard to just the economy, because that generates local tax dollars and state tax dollars. The more people we employ, the more we have in the way of sales tax. The more people we employ, the more that we have in the way of income tax.
Right. I'm not a big fan of government being one of the largest employers in a region. I think that to me that screams a problem. That screams I don't know exactly what the problem it screams, but to me when your government is one of the largest employees in the area, it's just like this weird little like circular motion kind of thing. It's like they work to go spend money to raise taxes so that they can get paid on their paycheck, and go make money and spend it and pay it on taxes, where it's more of a circular. I don't know. I guess my assumption on is it's harder to grow that kind of economy when it's literally existing to pay for itself.
Yeah, and we're in a metropolitan area, and that's very different than if you go to a small rural county. If there's no major industry in that county, then your major employer will be the schools and city and county employees, however large or small that may be.
Right.
If you've got a factory that employs 300 people, that's substantial in some of the smaller counties. But in our metropolitan area, our Republican candidates look at and examine the impact on the metropolitan economy.
All right, so we're talking economics. What do you think about baseball?
Oh, Lance, it's kind of strange to watch a baseball game and the stands are empty.
Well, but if we bring one down to downtown, you think we're going to fill those stands up once this thing's over with?
I haven't read the business plan, but I have confidence, to be honest with you, in Randy in regard to putting together a business plan that's effective.
Yeah, I think it's been a very interesting show to watch as far as trying to put all the parts and pieces together. Again, it's so damn complicated. There's so many moving parts and pieces on like special tax districts, and I can't remember the phrase for the different like property tax. I can't remember what. Anyway, TIPS program, I think is what it's called. Anyway, some of the different tax incentive programs that they can put in place, and all the different moving parts and pieces in trying to get really like a what's this going to cost me out of the conversation, and it doesn't. The whole plan hasn't hit the table yet, so it's talking in hypotheticals to start on top of a super complicated system. And I do have the guys from Mr. Mamontoff and a couple of those that are helping construct the plan coming in here next week, 2 weeks from now, and we're going to try to break down some of that part of it. I find it I don't know. It's the one thing I don't want it to be is because that's the way it's done. That's the only thing that I don't like about the conversation, is because cities and counties do these kind of things fairly regularly. I mean, how much did Maryville give up to or Alcoa rather, give up to Amazon to get that Amazon distribution center down there? It's a normal game, but I don't like that as the reason. If we run the math out and it's projections, obviously, and it makes sense, then I'm on board, even though it goes against some of my core libertarianism. But I'm willing to flex a little bit and participate, and not just stand on my philosophical high ground and yell at everybody and tell them they're wrong. That's another thing that I found in doing this show, is that it's really easy for people to come and say no to stuff, and this is a politics thing in general. It's really easy for people to come and say, no, I think it's a bad idea. But to put really good structure behind why it's a bad idea and alternatives to fix what the point of the idea is. So like the baseball stadium's trying to fill a hole in the city and get some stuff and get some activity down there and get some economics moving. Well, I don't think the baseball stadium's an idea. Well, what ideas do you have to get that section of Knoxville hustling and bustling? Like, that's one of my frustrations as I'm talking to people, because no is easy, but a better idea, that's hard. And I think people are too easy they lean too hard on the no and don't come up with an alternative more times than not. So, and again, that's what I'm trying to do with the education conversation. It's more money is the easy answer. It doesn't mean it's the right one. Let's try some other ideas instead of just always leaning back on the more money one. So I'm out of stuff. I'm so confused. I'm fully confused right now, which is the point. That's what I want to do. I want to sit here and get super confused for an hour, and then I'll listen to myself talking. Hopefully everybody listening will listen to it, and they'll be have a little bit better grasp and understanding of what's going on. So just to finish up, is there anything else that I can do for you while we're here?
Well, I appreciate you asking me to come and be a part of your show. I appreciate the fact that you're trying to communicate with the public in regard to issues, and I think it's important that the leadership that the Republican Party has, you know, as we look down the road in the future, is effective, is knowledgeable, and is experienced to give the candidates the best shot of the support they need to win elections.
Okay, so I have one last question. Since you made it public that you intended to, this is selfish. This is really just for me to feel good about myself, I hope. Since you made this announcement that you intend to seek the chair, has anybody else called you for an interview?
Yes.
Damn it. Okay.
Yes, there's been I've had, truly, I mean, I'm amazed at the response I'm receiving. I never dreamed that my candidacy would have this kind of a positive response. I'm literally I'm getting calls now saying, "Hey, I understand you're going to run. I'm going to support you."
Good. Okay. Yeah. Well, then my second one is a request. Then, come March 7th. I'm sorry. Let's use this. Let's play the where a candidate came. I was every time I talk to candidates, it's whenever they're talking, they always say when I win instead of if I win. They always like to say when I win, put that positive vibe out. So when you win, okay. I'd like to get you shortly after your win, and then we could talk about your plan moving forward, having had the position.
Be happy to do that.
Excellent. All right. Well, I got an outro tune, and then we'll send you on your merry little way. Do you have any contacts that you want to give out as far as either contact the party or contact you directly as far as just any of the structural stuff that you need to do if anybody needs to get a hold of you or the party or something like that? Do you have any that you want to plug real fast before we shut it down?
Yeah. If someone would like to call and chat with me in reference to my candidacy for party chair, my phone number is 865-604-0164.
All right, I'll put that in the show notes for everybody as well.
Yeah,
so it's
865-604-0164.
Excellent.
And email is the initials BDB72@AOL.com. Baker David Baker 72@AOL.com.
All right, I'll put that in the show notes for you as well. Outro. That was neat. Trying to learn stuff, trying to figure things out. Got some education. I always like to sneak in anybody that's done anything in the education through local or state level government, because as much as I complain or joke or whatever you want to say about how confusing all of politics and government is, really trying to hammer down the way the school boards work in relation to the state and the local governments and stuff like that has been the hardest for me to really wrap my brain around. And then that's not even adding the money part into the conversation. So we're almost in agreement at gmail.com, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. Our website is live. Almostinagreement.com is up. It's live. It has links to all the shows as well as any of our sponsorship that we're working on. And you can listen to the show there or your favorite podcast player as well. Shoot us an email if you have any requests, any questions. We're trying to find the bottom of this pit, but we're going to keep going at what it looks like. So almost agreement at gmail.com, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. Almostinagreement.com is live. Thank you all for listening. Have a great day.